It seemed like days later when I finally managed to get up from my bed. A glance at the clock told me that I had been asleep for 12 hours. I found it unusual, because normally I would have gotten messages as early as 5 in the morning. I assumed that the directors must have sent out an order to leave me in peace until I saw it fit. I was still upset about last night. The fact that they assigned a guardian to protect me annoyed the hell out of me. I wasn't a damsel in distress who couldn't protect herself. I kicked ass since an early age when the preschool bullies thought it was funny to put earthworms in my hair. Despite my annoyance, it also triggered my curiosity. Why were the Phantoms so invested in supposedly trying to kill me? Surely there were far more talented secret agents who would be more worthwhile to focus on. I also wasn't sure when I was supposed to meet this guardian, or if I'd even get the chance to meet him or her. I sighed and rubbed my temples as I started to get a headache from all of my rushing thoughts. At least the directors allowed me to stay in my apartment. It may not have been special, but it was still my home. Eventually, restlessness caught up with me, and I found myself stripping off the previous day's clothes for newer, cleaner ones. Out of habit, I attached the straps that held my gun onto my blouse, and covered it with a simple black sweater. I may not have been on duty, but it was better to be safe than sorry. I ventured outside and walked among the dense crowd. It was an interesting transition from being the observer to becoming observed. The fact, however, left me feeling a bit suspicious about the drone-like individuals that went on by, completely oblivious to the prospect of the war going on. They were more than happy to believe that the war ended with the death of the Phantom leader back in 2012. I forced myself to get rid of the thought of the person I hated the most. Instead, I told myself to just enjoy the moment without the burden of Seeker responsibilities. As I was walking down the street, I realized that I had no idea where I was going. Normally, the idea would have had me worried, especially on a mission. At that moment, however, I simply allowed the flow of the crowd to guide me wherever they chose. Ironically, I was led to the site of where my mission was held just a few days ago. Knowing that the whole thing was possibly meant as a trap left me shivering in acknowledgement. That was a real bullet I had just dodged. The entire area was sealed off, and warning signs were placed all around. A secret team was scattered along the perimeter as they made sure no one entered the ruin. There had been a brief announcement of the disaster on the local news during my stay at the hospital. The media's interpretation was that the explosion was caused by a gas leak, another example of the Seeker's influence over the information released to the public. I didn't know why, but something within me compelled me to check out the ruins. As such, my feet moved on their own accord towards the center of the destruction. The secret agents who saw me merely glanced at me, but didn't move to stop me. I reached the center of the ruins, and stopped, as I was unsure of what to do next. I vaguely remembered reading an article that discussed the psychological need for one to visit the very place where they had suffered or nearly died. The reason for me, however, seemed to have been more complex than any explanation the article gave. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something metallic shine under the bright spring sun. Curious, I stepped towards it and bent down to get a better look. It was a plain silver ring with symbols that engraved it around the entire circumference. Upon closer inspection, I realized that the symbols were actually Latin words, though I couldn't understand what they meant. Who would have thought that I would have needed to learn Latin? After a moment of debating, I decided to keep the ring and slid it into my pant pocket. Maybe it was valuable. I snorted at the mere thought and walked back towards the main road. I spent the next couple of hours wandering around the block, not really paying attention to the details. Before I knew it, the sun had already set. Those city lights became brighter and more numerous. It's exactly what was expected from the city that never slept. Abruptly, the hair on the back of my neck stood on end, and I shivered involuntarily. In the distance, I heard some gunfire, before they came to an abrupt halt. Heart beating quickly, I cautiously made my way to the source of the disturbance. I arrived back at the ruins and was met with the sight of corpses. I turned around as I looked for the ones responsible while stepping back into cover. As if on cue, dark figures began to surround me. I pulled out my gun and made sure that it had full ammo before I placed it on defensive position. The figures' faces were covered, but I was able to make out the signature glowing eyes that not even the darkness could have hidden. Phantoms. I narrowed my eyes as I allowed my secret training instincts to kick in, and waited for the first move. I caught movement from the corner of my eye and immediately reacted. I swirled around and caught the knife that was aimed at my throat. I pulled violently at the arm and firmly grabbed the knife before it flew through the air. I kicked the phantom on the stomach, which pushed him back. Rapidly, I threw the knife and it hit the chest of an oncoming phantom. He crashed to the ground. There were still more. Strong arms trapped me from behind. The force caused me to drop my gun, and I was pushed against the perimeter fence. As I twisted my waist, I managed to put my feet in the air and climbed the wall. I then used the momentum to do a backflip, while I sent my captor falling to the dirty ground. I landed on my feet gracefully, and anticipated the next wave of attack. I grabbed my gun that was flung earlier, and fired a couple of rounds into some of the incoming phantom agents. At the same time, I was dodging some of their own return fire. I slightly grinned as the rush of the adrenaline coursed through my veins. I ran towards the nearest phantom agent and slid under his legs. I then kicked him where it really hurt. The figure dropped to his knees and held onto his private area, before he finally fell to the ground in a fetal position. I smirked, but quickly regained my focus as I felt a bullet scrape my arm. Ugh. Nothing serious, but it had stung like a bitch. I narrowed my eyes, and I ran in between whatever cover I could find. All the while, I headed towards the last two phantom agents. I managed to surprise one of them as I jumped onto his back and cracked his neck. The last survivor turned around and kicked me to the ground. I landed painfully in the arm that was grazed by a bullet. I hissed as the discomfort got worse. The sound of the gun cocking, however, momentarily made me forget the pain. I looked up to see the last phantom agent aim my gun at me. I couldn't even move up to try to defend myself, so I covered my face with my uninjured arm. Amazingly, the phantom agent let out a sharp breath, and I saw blood soak through his gray shirt.
Ugh.
He dropped to his knees and fell over, his blank eyes staring at me. I couldn't hold back a shiver as I tried to avoid looking at the dead phantom. Through the pitch black, I saw a red-stained knife being flung against the opposite wall. Damn, I thought. I really wish I had my gun. From the darkness came a hooded figure, covered in a thick trench coat, that gave him the appearance of an old-fashioned detective. He came towards me, the sound of his heeled boots sliced through the thick silence. I shifted backwards until I hit a wall. The figure stopped exactly in front of my feet. Despite his situational advantage over me, I could sense that whoever he was, his intentions weren't to harm me. "Who are you?" I finally asked after a few minutes of just observing the man. The sound of his deep breathing was all that he made.
I'm your guardian.